First note, he loved him as he loved himself. This is the requirement of the law, to love your neighbor as yourself. Second, he made a covenant or a promise to David. What happens next is a demonstration of agape love. He took off his robe, his tunic and sword, his bow and his belt, and gave them to David. As the son of the king, Jonathan was next in line to be king after his father. It appears, though, that Jonathan sees God's plan for David to be the next king. Instead of getting jealous or resisting it, he gives him his royal robe. He sees God's good vision for David and unconditionally sacrifices his greatest opportunity for his friend, and that is huge. As David was more successful because of the presence of the Spirit within him, jealousy again began to grow like a cancer in King Saul. The jealousy grew so much that Saul committed to taking David out by whatever means necessary. In 1 Samuel chapter 19, King Saul even goes so far as instructing his son Jonathan to kill David. Imagine that. You've been given instructions by legal authority to take out your best friend. Instead, Jonathan warns David of his father's intentions, and David flees. In 1 Samuel chapter 20, David comes back into town and arranges a secret meeting with Jonathan. He says to Jonathan, "What have I done? What is my crime? How have I wronged your father that he is trying to kill me?" Jonathan replies, "You are not going to die." When David is wearing down, Jonathan reminds him of God's good plan for his life. You can't die. God wants you to be the next king instead of me. In this same chapter, there is a dinner at the palace. David is absent, and it's driving the king crazy. When he senses Jonathan is covering for David, he blows his top and yells at his son. Listen to what Saul says in 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman, don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die." When Jonathan once again advocates for David, his father picks up a spear and hurls it at his son with the intent to kill him. I'm blown away at what happens in the next verse. Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger. On that second day of the feast, he did not eat because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. Jonathan wasn't angry because his dad threw a spear at him. He was angry because of the shameful treatment of David. David is forced to flee and is on the run from Saul for the next several years. In Jonathan and David's last meeting, we are told that they wept together, but David wept the most. Why, of course, Jonathan unconditionally and sacrificially laid down everything for David. Fast forward to the end of 1 Samuel. Jonathan dies in battle with his father. The book of 2 Samuel opens up with David finally being made king, just as God and Jonathan saw years before. Now, does this kind of love still exist today? Actually, I've seen it over and over again in committed followers of Jesus, believers whose grape has fully ripened with the love of God for others to taste. Back in 2005, I was serving as a teaching pastor for a large congregation in Chicago. I came across a wonderful lady who had cancer. Soon after she married her husband, the first cancer appeared, and over the next 20 years of their marriage, she battled off and on with cancer. When I came on the scene, the cancer had returned once again, and it wasn't likely she would make it through this one. When I met her, what dominated our conversation was her comments about her husband. She was blown away at how crazy faithful he had been in loving her. He signed up for better or worse in sickness and in health. She said, "He has only gotten the worse and the sickness, but he has loved me so unconditionally and sacrificially through it." Tears streamed down her cheeks. I asked her if she wanted to do something special for him. I was teaching on the story of Jonathan and David, and on the stage, I had a king's robe on a coat rack the entire time I gave the talk. It represented the robe Jonathan took off to give to David. As I came to the end of this talk, I invited the woman to the stage and she began to tell her story. Her husband, still sitting in the audience, had no idea what was coming. After she finished, she called him to the stage. She walked over and took hold of the royal robe and draped it over her husband. It was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever witnessed in my life. About a year later, she died, but not before telling the world of her Jonathan.